Kia ora koutou. I just want to get some thumbs up to make sure people can hear me. We'll wait for some of them to trickle through and then we'll get started. Haven't seen any come through yet. Hey, thanks, Robin. Just get one more, make sure everyone can hear. Yay, thank you so much. Cool. Well, kia ora koutou, everyone. Thanks again for joining us for another week of Lunch Money. For those of you who are new to Lunch Money, we do these every Thursday at lunchtime in Aotearoa time, and also available as a podcast via Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts too. So I'm Brooke, one of the co-founders and co-CEOs here at Sharesies, and I'm also based in Australia, Sydney at the moment. So in light of that, I just really want to acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their continuing connection to land, culture and community. And we really do pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. So it's really an honour to be here in Sydney. I also want to introduce Alice, who's joining us to interview Ralph. So Alice, do you just want to give a few words about you?
Kia ora everyone. So my name is Alice and I've recently joined the Sharesies team and I am the financial analyst who's come on board. So really excited to be here on Lunch Money today.
Yeah, it's so great to have you here, Alice. It's good to have another wahine in finance helping us, demystify this world. So what's really exciting that's been happening at Sharesies is recently we launched the Australian shares on Sharesies, and now you have access to thousands of companies and exchange traded funds on the Australian Stock Exchange. And one of those companies available on the Australian Stock Exchange is one that Ralph Highnam heads up, which is Volpara Health Technologies, which is one of the ASX listed companies which are now available on Sharesies. So just a reminder, if you have any questions, please submit them through the Ask a Question button below. Don't leave questions in the question areas as we might miss them. And a big legal disclaimer is there's no personalised advice on throughout this conversation, and please be kind and respectful towards our speakers and your fellow viewers. Otherwise, we will take steps to remove you from the webinar, which obviously we don't want to do. So I want to introduce Ralph, who is the founder, executive director, and CEO of Volpara Health Technologies, the medical technology company that provides breast imaging, analytics, and analysis tongue-tied. Analysis products for the early detection of breast cancer. So super important mahi you're doing there, Ralph. He's been at the forefront of the digital breast imaging field for over 25 years and is committed to improving health outcomes for women around the world. Founded in 2019, Volpara now has its software installed in over 590 sites and has provided breast density assessments to more than 13 million women across 39 countries. Ralph is actually based in Te Whanganui-Atara, Wellington, where last year Volpara was awarded the Supreme and Cyber Gold Awards at the 2020 Wellington Gold Awards. So massive welcome, Ralph, and really great to have you on the show with us.
Awesome, Brooke and Alice. It's great to be here. Thank you.
Cool. Well, I'm going to pass over to Alice now to ask you a few questions about you and Volpara.
Cool. Thanks, Brooke. So Ralph, maybe to start off with, you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and who are you and how did you end up founding Volpara?
Yeah, so I'm Ralph Highnam. Obviously, I'm a PhD and I'm a chief scientist and CEO of Volpara. I did my PhD in the University of Oxford and it was all about AI and maths and software. And that was all well and good, and but when I started looking for a subject for the PhD, the trend back then, would you believe it, was autonomous vehicles. And when everyone started talking to me about those, I just got very bored very quickly. But then Professor Sir Mike Brady sat me down and said, look, breast cancer screening works, but it's not optimal. And my mother-in-law has just died of breast cancer. And I want to look at using AI to improve breast cancer. So that was in the 1990s. And yeah, that really kick-started my whole career in this space. So, Brooke, every now and then I say 25 years, but I think the years go by and suddenly it's 30 years or so. So it's been 30 years now of looking at ways of using AI to improve breast cancer. And really, a lot of my key skills are taking stuff out the research labs over into that commercial world and actually making all that good work actual clinical reality. And to get to a point now, 32% of US women having AI applied to their images and data, it is an incredibly rewarding position for us to be in.
That's incredible, 32% of women in the US, wow. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about Volpara and, what does the business do, what's your vision, and how did it become the business that it is today?
Yeah, so so we did a PhD and I did lots of postdocs and stuff. We tried to commercialize the work in 2000 from the PhD, and we realized back then in Oxford that the world wasn't ready for it. We're going to come back to a question later about challenges and medical world takes a long time and you have to be patient and relentless. But 2000, the world wasn't ready for what we were doing. So Mike Brady and myself switched over to brain imaging and lung imaging, and we were very successful and sold the company to CTI in 2003, at which point I could move to Wellington, where my wife is a Kiwi and she had to finish off her medical degree. So I came back here. Did lots of consulting work, and then 2009, so again, not a bit earlier than announced. In 2009, I sat down with Mike Brady at a trade show and said, I'm watching all the stories in the US, women in the US are now crying out and they understand the information that we were generating in the PhD. Now is the time to commercialize it. So that was really the launch of Volpara. Could have done it anywhere in the world at that point, but Wellington back then had a fantastic IP lawyer who was free, and also the New Zealand government's been very supportive over the time, over this whole period. And being Wellington, I think, helps because you just walk down the road to see people around that. So we kick-started off in 2009 here in Wellington. We were born global on Skype from day one with 3 of the leading professors in this space around the world and myself in a little flat in Mount Vic. And we're now at a point where, as we talked about, 32% market share in the US, annual recurring revenue of about $28 million New Zealand. We have about 180 staff. We've just tipped over now to having more staff in the US than in New Zealand. But I think at heart, we're still very much a Kiwi company. We follow Kiwi values and are about being bold, relentless, but being far out as well, for example, and being extraordinary. And I think they really help us as a company succeed on a global basis.
That's awesome. And I mean, you talk about being a Kiwi company and that, but as Brooke mentioned at the start, you are an ASX listed security. So maybe could you talk us through, how it came that you're listed on the ASX opposed to, say, the NZX?
Yep. So we're a strange kind of mix of a company. We are a SaaS company, but also we are a biotech. And as a biotech, a lot of the AI that we apply to breast images to generate breast density scores or quality scores about the breast tissue, that is all subject to FDA or TGA regulation or CE marking. And we felt, as we were looking for more funds to really grow the business to a global scale, that the ASX understood biotech a lot more. There's a lot more just biotech funds and stuff around the ASX. And frankly, I think it was the right decision. It's been a very positive experience for us so far.
Well, that's great. And so, with Volpara, you obviously are doing screenings and they're on lots of women across the world, but who are actually your customers and whereabouts are they based?
Yeah, so we have customers in 39 countries around the world, but the biggest source of revenue and paying customers is the US. Which is where we've got the 32%, probably 90% of our revenue comes from the US. Our customers are breast imaging sites. So they're the sites that actually do the breast x-rays. And they are buying our software for 2 reasons. One is it improves patient care. So we can help get all the imaging done all in one day. We can make sure the radiation dose used is minimal. We can make sure the breast compression, when a mammogram's done, the breast is compressed. We can make sure that's as comfortable as possible. We can make sure the image quality is extremely high. And then we can give high density scores to the radiologist. So and risk scores. So the radiologist knows full well the woman's background, whether she's low risk or high risk or so on. So yeah, so most of our customers are in the US. They buy us because it's proven, clinically proven, over 300 papers now to improve patient care. But on the flip side of that as well, we also improve the ROI stories for these centres. So we help reduce costs of audits, for example, but also we help generate revenues by ensuring the right women go on for MRI or the right women go on for genetics and so on.
Oh, cool. And so how do you actually make money as a company? You've talked about being a SaaS company. Could you explain maybe what are your different revenue streams?
Yeah, we are a SaaS company. We used to be a capital company, but we switched to SaaS. One of the reasons we listed was to switch to SaaS. So the customers then pay us effectively based on the number of women each year. So if a screening site is screening 10,000 women, depending on how many products they buy from us. If it's one product, it could be $2 per woman. If it's 5 or 6 products, it could be up towards $10 per woman. The model we use it's turned out to be very resilient. It's annual cash paid a year up front. So it's not pay per use. It's more of an annual subscription model and so on. So yeah, that's how we make the money. We've got hundreds of customers over there in the US that are paying us on a very regular basis with very low churn over this period. And it's been very important during COVID in particular that we were SaaS and we had this annual subscription model up and running. It's really helped us a great deal over this period.
Right. Yeah. So you've got your customers signing up with a subscription fee and they're, signed up for a number of years or so.
Yep. Yeah. Typically up to 5 years. That's the typical contract length.
And then what's the competitive landscape like? Who are your competitors and what makes Volpara different to the other, businesses doing this in the market?
Yeah, there's a huge, there's an increasing number of AI companies around the world. But, what we learned at Oxford in the 1990s was, AI is good, it's useful, it takes you so far. But, to make AI work in clinical practice, you need to understand what you're actually imaging. So you can't just be a super smart AI guy and just say, data is data, I'm going to process it and generate all this amazing breast cancer detection data. You have to understand what the breast is, how it compresses, how X-rays pass through the breast to form the image, right the way through to what does a cancer form, how does it form in the breast, and so on. Then using all that information, you then devise your AI kind of based on a really thorough understanding of what you're actually aiming to do, rather than just trusting data to be data. So that's what really stands us out from the crowd. The other aspect, so that's kind of the core kind of science aspect, and we have about 98 patents or so now out there, going back to the patent lawyer in Wellington right at the start. She's still working for us now in the south of France, which is slightly different to Wellington, but not on a day like today. So yeah, a very strong scientific basis, a very thorough understanding of what we do. We do have competition comes in, but they tend to come in with a pure AI viewpoint rather than a science viewpoint, and they tend to come in kind of tackling one or two areas of what we do, whereas what we do today is we sell a platform of products. So we don't just do breast density scoring, which is a very important risk factor for women, but we do quality control, we do patient management, we do a whole range of stuff. And if a customer buys all the products from us, they get all the integrations between them, and it makes the whole product suite much more compelling. So again, that really stands us apart from the competition.
That's really interesting, and also no doubt having experts on board such as yourself has really helped your success as well. But we touched on it, or you mentioned it slightly earlier. What do you see as some of the biggest risks and opportunities for Volpara at the moment, and how are you responding to them?
Yeah, I think if you ask most companies around the world, right, COVID-19 and coronavirus has been a big risk. I think last year at this point, I would have been probably a very different looking CEO than I am today. I mean, this point last year, breast cancer screening had stopped for the best part of 2 months. It then started again because people realised you can't stop screening because they were starting to see advanced stage breast cancers coming through. So they were very geared to getting going, screening running again. But I think fair to say there's still coronavirus issues out there in terms of hospital budgets, in terms of certainty around their budgets. So that is certainly one thing that we're looking on. The other aspect of what we do is around people. And again, we're based in New Zealand. Travel, I think someone talked a bit about this earlier. To me, actually meeting people in the flesh, seeing people in the flesh is critical to us, and that's not just in terms of going to say shows or meeting investors in Sydney. That's also going to the retail shows like Techno and some of those other good ones that get run over there in Australia, and meeting some of the retail people. Right the way through to actually going in and meeting our customers or meeting our staff. So we do a huge amount of work now doing virtual team building and just making sure all the bonds are tight. But until travel comes out, there's going to be a certain amount of uncertainty around everything. Although I have to say, we've just finished our Q4. It was very strong, and the financial year we've ended 20% up in terms of organic and ARR, which if you'd asked me that 12 months ago, I'd have been staggered at achieving that. So I think that really shows the resilience of the people, the industry, and just the desire across the world to keep on detecting breast cancers early. So we're very pleased with how all that played out.
Yeah, it sounds like, you definitely pivoted among with the many businesses across the world into facing that COVID challenge. And so, with having your software across 39 different countries, are you continuing to, run into roadblocks with COVID, or is it largely across the board now that people are back to screening for breast cancer? And
yeah, people very much are back to screening now globally, which is great to see. And like I was saying, there is a sense in the US that the budgets are freeing up, which is good. There's more certainty coming into the whole US, which is our biggest market. We did put Europe and Australia and Asia onto the back burner somewhat for the last year, and I don't think we're going to be taking them off the back burner for a while yet. And again, like if you look at Asia, we've got some great distributors up there, but they need us traveling up there to actually help them sell. They need us as scientists going up there and selling. So there's still some areas of the world where we are participating, but not as much as we would have done normally.
And so on that US note, back in February, Volpara acquired the US-based cancer risk assessment firm CRA Health. So could you talk us through sort of the rationale for that acquisition and what it means for Volpara's business? Yeah.
So Alice, let's take a little step back there. So in 2019, we hit something like 20 million mammograms in our cloud, which is a phenomenal data set. And we realized back then that we needed the patient data to be associated with those images before we could do some really powerful AI to really start detecting cancer much, much earlier. And if you asked about our mission as a company, our mission is saving lives from cancer. And part of that then is we want to be we are world leaders now in cancer prevention software. And part of that then means being able to predict breast cancer to an incredibly accurate level. And we had the images and we needed the patient data. So in 2019, we brought a Seattle-based company called MRS. And what they do is hold all the patient data back then for about 20% of the US market. So that was great. And that whole integration went extremely well with them. And we learned a lot during that process. And we started to develop some really powerful AI. And during the last year, in particular, with COVID and other things, there were a lot of tailwinds developing in the US around breast cancer risk in particular. So a big push in the US in particular to move from one-size-fits-all screening to personalised breast cancer screening. And to do that, you need to do breast cancer risk assessment. So with MRS, we start to see lots of sales into doing risk assessment. So X-rays would be done. We would compute the breast density. Breast density would flow into a breast cancer risk model sitting inside of MRS, and we would produce breast cancer risk scores. Then they would say, look, you're very high risk. We recommend you have MRI done, or you're very high risk. We recommend you have some genetics testing just in case you have some of the BRCA genes, for example. So a lot of tailwinds started to develop over the last year around risk assessment. And that was tied in with our data concept all the way along. However, we also learned over the last year that there's a lot of tailwinds towards genetics testing as well, with groups like the CDC coming out and saying all women should get risk assessment and genetics, or the American College of Radiology starting to say everyone should have risk assessment and having personalised screening and or genetics set down from an early age. So we started to look at what we're doing. We said, well, we've got all this great patient data, we've got all these images, that's fantastic. But we lack a lot of knowledge around genetics. So we looked around the world, and CRA is a spin out of MGH, Mass General Hospital, or Harvard Medical School over in Boston. They are world experts in risk and genetics, and some of the guys there really are exceptional. So it made a lot of sense for us to merge the two companies together. So now we have data from, we have the patient data, we have images. At some point, we'll have genetics data as well flowing in, and it's just going to be a phenomenal data set. And going back to our aim to be a leader in cancer prevention software, we want to move the overall game from detection through to prevention. Let's start flagging up women at high risk. Let's get them screening, or let's get them onto certain drugs, or let's get their diet changed, or whatever it is, to really help them, even avert cancer if at all possible. So that was kind of the strategic reason for buying CRA. The other aspect of CRA which really appealed to us was during COVID in particular, the big electronic health record companies have started to edge around breast cancer imaging in the US, and CRA have got some fantastic connections and integrations with those companies. So a couple of good reasons. They were also profitable, which helped, and they're good ARR. I think it was around 4.5 or 4 million when we brought them of ARR. So multiple reasons for buying them. I have to say it's been a joy so far working with them. If you go online, you'll see a video of Professor Kevin Hughes giving a speech recently all about Volpara and CRA, a big surgeons conference, which is just a phenomenal talk he gave. And then going back to kind of what Volpara does, next week you'll see a video come out from one of our top customers, Boca Raton in Florida, describing how they use all of Volpara's AI to really up the level of service that they provide to women each and every day.
Well, that's really interesting, and no doubt I'll be keen to watch that video when it comes out to see what it's actually the Volpara system looks like. You mentioned a couple of times there that metric ARR, or annualized recurring revenue, and you mentioned a bit in your annual reports and interim report and that. Could you please explain what that means and why it's an important metric for Volpara?
Yep, well, so it's an important metric for all SaaS companies, and the way we define it is annual recurring revenue, which is, and I think the more technical term might even be contracted annual recurring revenue. So every time we get a contract in, let's say it's a contract for $100,000, as soon as that's signed, we add $100,000 to the ARR that we report to the market. It's an important metric because it's slightly forward-looking. So ARR effectively kind of tells you if everyone installed your software tomorrow, so they started using your services tomorrow, that's the kind of revenue number that you might expect to see over the next year. So as we said, we just hit $28 million of New Zealand ARR. So that means we've got contracts sitting in our CFO's hands, to that number. So yeah, it kind of gives you a bit of forward indication of where we're going. We also do obviously report what we call accounting revenue. So in a couple of weeks' time, we'll do our full year report, and in that, the focus will be on the audited, accounting revenue, which is fully audited, and it's much more kind of conventional. But the SaaS or the ARR metric is just that bit more kind of forward looking, which is why it's important.
I see. Yeah, no, it's good to differentiate, I guess, between that audited revenue amount and then that ARR amount and what they actually mean and what they're capturing.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So maybe just one last question. As your role as CEO, what do you do on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, I'm extremely lucky to have a very varied role. So yeah, it could vary from sitting down with the science team and going through some very deep science, looking at lots of images, working out what we've got some very long-term science projects sitting in the background. One of the things, again, talking about prevention, for example, one of our dreams as a company has been to start tracking change over time. So one day I might be sitting looking at images and looking at how the breast changes over time if a woman is on HRT or on tamoxifen, and trying to work out what the effect is on the breast tissue. But then I spend a lot of time talking to customers and supporting the US sales team or the Australian sales team in my role as chief scientist. But then a lot of the other work I do is really about underpinning the whole company. I know the US market very well, even though I'm here in New Zealand. I like to think I can speak Kiwi, UK, American pretty well, and Australian pretty well, and understand all the nuances. So a lot about gluing the company together, making sure sales know what product's doing, product knows what engineering's doing, customer feedback is moving in the right directions, and so on. So a lot of my role now is really about underpinning stuff, some of that key science, and then talking to investors as well. And I do enjoy talking to investors, both institutional and retail investors. And so I do urge you all to come along to the AGM. We do take a different take on Volpara at the AGM, and we run through clinical papers, give people updates on breast cancer screening and so on. So come along and learn.
Awesome.
I love that.
I was just going to say, so I might pass over to Brooke now, and she'll have a look at the questions that have been asked. Cool.
Yeah,
so
thanks so much for that really fascinating interview. And this work or more work going into women's health is so important, and especially this breast cancer area seems like there's so much more advancement that's needed, and it's great that Volpara is really there and working on that. I think, I know people that have been impacted by breast cancer, and a lot of the listeners have too. So it's really great to kind of get behind this business and hear a bit more about what's happening and how the science is really being thought about, which is great. So we've got a few questions from listeners. And the first question from Deb is, health tech seems like a good ethical investment, but how do we assess risk? What are some good resources to read up on health tech wise, or health tech companies?
Yeah, whenever I look at health tech, I always one of the key resources for me in health tech is always there's always people around you that have had that disease. Quite frankly, whether it's breast cancer, multiple sclerosis, lung cancer, whatever. So talk to people around you, talk to the medical doctors. That they all know. Generally they all know the state of the art, or at least where things are heading, and what makes sense, what doesn't make sense. So that's always a good first port of call. Health tech, going back to my days in Oxford, right? I mean, I'm not interested in autonomous cars. I'm not interested in all that kind of stuff. Health tech is a fascinating space. You get to do the AI, and maths and science, but you get to learn about breast tissue. You get to learn about breast compression. You get to learn about how cancers form, not just in the breast but elsewhere. You get to learn about psychology and physiology. So it is a fascinating area, but you do have to be patient as you go. A lot of these companies, and again, go back Brooke, to one of your first questions or about the ASX. A lot of these companies struggle to get FDA. FDA or TGA is one of the first steps, so you have to be patient with that. And companies list, especially on the ASX, pre-FDA. So expect them to spend a year or two getting to the point of FDA, and then one of the big things in healthcare is inertia. People like the status quo. They trust the status quo. So it takes time again to build up your brand, to build up your reputation, to build up your trust, and then to get momentum. But once you get momentum, though, you do have barriers to entry, like the FDA, like your brand, like your reputation, like 300 clinical papers, and you start to make serious traction in helping people. So like with all investments, there's risks, but you've got some great resources around you to read about. And one of the things, there's a great saying, right? If you read something, it sounds too good to be true. It usually is too good to be true. So if you hear about an AI company coming out with a new tool, there was one going around the internet this week about a blue box promising to detect all breast cancers early. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is too good to be true. So
interesting thoughts there. I'm going to combine two questions from Joy and Denver here. So Denver's asked, will Volpara's extensive R&D work on Project Dents allow Volpara to announce future advancements in its product pipeline? And merging that with Joy's question is, what is Volpara's product roadmap for the next 3 years?
Yeah, so it's a great question. And Project Dents is go back to that word patient. So 10 years ago, 2009, I told our investors at the time we were about to do a 10-year trial in the Netherlands. It wasn't going to pay us any money. In fact, we were going to pay to do all the engineering work for the trial, and they would see some results in 10 years' time. That they weren't particularly happy about that, but they accepted that's how it worked. But Project Dents started producing results in late 2019, and all the women in the Netherlands effectively were getting a Volpara density score. The women at high risk were going off for a breast MRI, and the results started coming out showing an extremely, a very dramatic reduction in interval breast cancers in that population. So it took a long time, but the results are phenomenal. And one of the other things about breast cancer screening in medical is, the US has all the early adopters because it has all these private clinics. But outside the US, it's mostly public screening, and they need all this randomized controlled trials, hard evidence to actually show how they should change. So DENTS is being analysed very closely right around the world by all the screening programs, and they all recognise breast density and risk. They all recognise they have to do something, but they're still trying to work out exactly what. And DENTS is really leading them into that something what. So it's leading into all kinds of interesting conversations around the world. DENTS is, and I have to say, from a personal viewpoint, seeing the number of cancers detected on there is just, the results were just beyond our dreams in terms of early cancer detection. But in terms of the roadmap, though, DENTS and other things have really shown us that the future detection of cancer is one thing. I really believe there's enough information in the breast tissue, in the woman's history of breast, of BMI, patient family history, and so on, that we really can predict breast cancer a lot more than we're doing today. So the future of Volpara is and we're saying now on a regular basis internally, we want to be the leaders in cancer prevention software. We want to be the leaders in predicting it, and we've got one of the largest data sets now in the world to do that. But if you predict it and people go on to preventative strategies, you need to be able to monitor it over time. So we want to be able to monitor these prevention things. And if a woman's on HRT and her breast density is going up, let's start flagging that up and saying, Mrs. Smith, you need to change your form of HRT because it's increasing your risk. Or right the way through to, okay, you're extremely high risk. One of your options is taking tamoxifen. Now, tamoxifen is proven to reduce breast cancer risk in certain women, but it has nasty side effects. So if you start taking tamoxifen and our monitoring software says, hey, your density is reducing, it's doing a lot of good for you, keep taking it. But if our software says you take a tamoxifen, you have these side effects, but it's not reducing your risk, then let's switch you to something else, another prevention strategy. And then into early detection. So we're very much then over this next period about prediction, about monitoring, and then about that early detection. And you'll see our roadmap head in that direction, and the data we're collecting, and the reason we brought MRS and then CRA is all pulling us all in that direction. And I have to say, we've been doing this for 12 years. I've been doing breast cancer imaging now for 30 years. And my PhD was on 6 or 7 images, because back then, these images were too big for a USB drive, so you couldn't process stuff. And I'm incredibly excited now, the AI team that we've got in Wellington, and the fact that we're processing tens of millions of data. It's just going to lead to a phenomenal advancement in women's healthcare.
Oh, it sounds like you've got a big roadmap ahead of you. And so in terms of executing on that, what is your sales and growth strategy over the next 5 years? As a question from Joy also.
Our focus, we're a SaaS company. Our focus very much is the US, but we are outside the US. We do have now 2 public screening programs signed up to some of the Volpara software, especially around quality assurance. So we certainly are looking at growth outside the US, and it's our dearest wish someday that we'll see more and more users of our software in New Zealand in particular. And we were very happy recently to have our first site in Wellington go live. So if you are in Wellington and you want to go breast density, breast cancer risk, you can now find it. So that was fantastic. So outside the US, and those public screening programs will be a big source. But over this next period in particular, we're focusing on risk and genetics, and that's our big push in the US. We see all the tailwinds there. So a lot of the growth this next coming year will be in the US again, and it'll be around risk and genetics.
Great, cool. And then I'll just take one last question. So what is the support framework to your existing clients across the globe?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. With medical devices, traditionally capital sales, and in medical devices, you'd walk in, you'd sell something, then you kind of disappear. But over the last few years, our sales team and the whole company is getting more and more SaaSy on a day-by-day basis. And as part of that, then we've just appointed Jill Spear to head up sales and marketing in the US, because she comes from effectively from GE, and she's one of their top breast imaging experts. But she's brought over a couple of people with her. So all our kind of tier 1 support is done out of Seattle, the company we brought. But then coming down the road now is a lot more Volpara user clubs, spreading knowledge about how people are using our software to make sure they're all using it successfully, spreading best practices to ensure breast compressions, optimal radiation doses, and cancer detection are all profitable. So that's actually going to be a big focus of ours this year. Launching Volpara kind of user club, getting everyone talking, and Jill's brought over a couple more people from GE, and they've actually started this week. So I haven't asked them to perform yet, but I'll give them a few days. But their job really is to start driving user engagement and make sure everyone's happy and really spread those best practices. So that's a big topic, Brooke, for us this year.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's really good support there. Hey, thank you so much for coming and speaking to us today, Ralph. We really appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to us living in a world where we can predict and prevent as many cancers as possible. And it's really great, this work focusing on breast screening and breast cancers too. So thank you so much to you and the team at Volpara. And thanks everybody for listening in today. And thanks Alice for joining us for your first lunch money. It's really great to have you here. So next Thursday, we'll be joined by Brian, the CEO of ASX listed company, Aroa Biosurgery, and you can register through the link in the chat that'll be popping up soon. And so Lunch Money will be back next Thursday. Keep an eye out on our share club, and you can join via Facebook if you haven't already, and we'll share a link there, and via the Lunch Money newsletter, and you'll also can register this through the footer on our website, which is www.sharesies.com. So enjoy the rest of your week and the weekend, and look forward to seeing you next week. Ka kite anō, everyone.
Thank you.